Hello, it's Tom, and today we have a care video for the ZZ plant. Okay, so the ZZ plant, it is a reasonably modern, popular houseplant. It started to be sold as a indoor plant around the late 90s, I believe, but it wasn't really sold in a great deal of places. It was quite under the radar. But early 2000s sort of period of time, it started to pick up and it became, I wouldn't say a staple, but it was definitely more common in many countries around the world. And it was the all green variety, which is this one here. I'll show some extra footage so you can see. But this was the original, the one that used to be sold in mass. It's pretty stable, it's pretty good, and I've had it a very long period of time. And then more varieties started to come out as people realized how easy these plants were and how good they looked in most homes. Then we had a couple of other ones that came out. So I'd say the three most popular ZZs you can buy today are the original. You can also buy the Raven. Okay, so that one has dark leaves. Uh, they're kind of maroon, but they look almost black, which is where the Raven name comes from. And yeah, when they first came out, they were in great demand. I would say that was probably one of the early sort of rare houseplants when it created a craze. This is before the boom of houseplants, which was a couple of years ago. So it was very popular. People loved it and they wanted it. And at that point, prices were really high. So that's kind of a taste, I suppose, of rare houseplants. But yeah, it was a very expensive plant at that time. However, today it's normal. Okay, the price of the Raven is probably the same cost as the original. There's not really any difference between them, and they are both equally, I'd say, widespread. And you could see either in a shop without it being a surprise or unusual. And then the third, I'd say, is quite a new one, which is the ZZ Zenzi, and that one is I quite like that actually. It's quite little. It's quite unique. It One of the problems with the original, which we'll cover shortly, is that it spreads and it's quite large and it's a little bit messy, tiny bit. And the Zenzi deals with that by being compact. So the leaves are much closer together. It has an overall compact shape. It's a dwarf look to it, so it fits into most areas of homes. And yeah, I think all three have their place. Okay, so they're going to be fans, and people are going to like one or the other more than the other ones. But I think they're all great plans. The care is pretty much identical for all of them, and they all good picks. So if you have all of them or just one of them, then it's good. So let's go on with the care. Let's talk about how we care for them, and let's chat about all that stuff. Okay, let's look at light. Just to let you know, I actually have all the plants dotted around here, Zenzi and the original, and also the Ravens just back here. And I own all three, and I've had them for quite a few years. So let's talk about them. Now, I would say the greatest advantage of a ZZ plant in general is how tolerant it is. People on YouTube, you might have seen some videos already, you might not have, but I would encourage you to go and have a look. There's lots of YouTubers and things setting up experiments where they see how long a houseplant can survive with no light or low light and no water and things like that. And it's really interesting. And the ZZ is consistently top. It is so hardy and it can survive really tough conditions. So in terms of light, you might the plant can go in almost darkness for a long period of time, and you might think it's okay and happy, but it's not. It's just literally surviving to the most extreme possible levels. What it really wants is medium light levels, really. It can deal with quite bright locations, absolutely fine. Avoid intense sunlight though. That can be a little bit too harsh for these plants. You might get away with it, and some people are bound to say, yeah, mine's in a really bright location, it's absolutely fine. And that is possible, absolutely. I'm not saying it's not. But I find that when I've grown mine in a full sun location, the leaves have just washed out. It doesn't look as good. It doesn't look as glossy and green as it does when the light's a little bit lower. When I say low, I don't mean low light. This is not a plant that will grow happily in low light. It will survive and it will cope with quite low light levels, but it's not really what it wants at all. It really does need a bit of light to grow. Or you're not going to see any growth. You're not going to get new stems coming up. You're not going to get anything happening to the plant if you try and grow in the lower light locations. They will cope with very little water, and they are extremely good at dealing with that scenario. So the number one problem people have with their ZZs is overwatering. And I say that in a lot of my videos because too much water can be really dangerous, and it really does just finish off houseplants quite easily. Because indoors it is lower light levels than what you get outside in their natural habitats, the temperatures tend to be a bit cooler. Overwatering is just something that plants are prone to, and they don't like it, and they can suffer badly. And the ZZ is no exception to this. It will absolutely love you to not water it for months. It will pull up with that. It will cope with it. It will be like, yes, please. But if you give it too frequent water, if you keep that soil moist, if you constantly keep putting water on, it's going to be gone. You're not going to have it for long at all. So I'm not saying you should put it in a period of drought for long periods of time, but it would prefer that. Okay, so that gives you sort of an idea, hopefully at this point, that it doesn't need a great deal of water, and that's true. With my ZZ plants, what I would do is I will water them well, and then they don't get water again until they have completely dried out, plus maybe another couple of weeks. So I barely water my ZZs. We're talking maybe once a month, maybe ever so slightly more, maybe every 3 weeks I look to water mine. Now, obviously there are exceptions and there are differences, and your growing style may be different to mine. You can water it once the potting mix has dried out. Okay, now that might only be a week for you, it might be longer, whatever, but it's fine. You can water it once it's dried. What I'm saying to you is do give it a period of drying out. And if you do want to not water it as frequently, that's fine too. It can cope with that. They do not need to be repotted that often. Now, this is one of those plants. I'd say the snake plant is also another one of these plants that do something similar, where they have extremely strong growth underneath the soil, so what you can't see. And the ZZ produces rhizomes. You'll notice if you own this plant, you'll know what I'm talking about. You would have seen them. They look like potatoes. They're massive. They're really chunky and big, and they push and they stretch and they dominate underground the potting mix in the pot that they're growing them in, and they will push. They will warp the plastic if that's what you're growing them in, and they look weird. I got some photos. I got loads of videos because it happens all the time. It's normal. So they will push themselves hard. Now, the plant will still produce some growth. It will find space. It will find, if there's a little bit of space in your potting where you can see into it, they will still find it, and they will produce and push up new growth. They're very adaptable at doing that. However, there will come a time where you do need to repot, but you don't have to do it as soon as you start noticing the container's full. You can wait a little bit longer. In terms of time, we're probably talking maybe a year, maybe possibly 2 afterwards. When you notice there's no growth whatsoever and you think there's no more space for any new shoots to pop up, then maybe it is time to think about repotting at that point. When you do come to repot, the potting mix, they are very easygoing. Compost is and soils. So take your pick, basically. They don't, as I said earlier in the video about watering, they prefer to be a little bit on the dry side. So if you are someone who knows that they overwater houseplants, you may want to choose something that's a little bit more free draining, just to give you that better chance of them having more of a long period of time growing in your home. Okay, so talking about temperature. Now, I think, I might need to double check this, but I'm pretty sure they originate from East Africa. The ZZ plant, and their natural habitat is Africa. That's what I'm going with, okay? If I'm wrong, I will correct myself. Now, that will give you an idea of where they're growing natively, which is a tropical sort of region they're not used to, and they don't expect, and they don't want cool or cold temperatures. So ideally, you don't want to be going anywhere really below 10 degrees Celsius, which is this Fahrenheit. And in most people's homes, that's not even going to be a thing you need to consider. The only time it may be a problem or a factor is if you have put your plant outside during the summer, which is absolutely fine. They're quite happy outdoors for the warmer months of the year. That's absolutely fine. But if you need to bring them back into the home before it gets into late autumn or winter, it's going to be too cold for them, so bring them back in. That's what the temperature needs. You won't need to worry about humidity. You really won't. I always say this because there are always exceptions, of course. If you have an extreme level of dry humidity, you may have problems. But that's never been my experience, ever. And I've grown them all around my home in different places, above radiators, and where I used to live, they were near a fire. The settings of the humidity level are so different, and I've never had a humidity related issue with these plants. They're just so tolerant. So You know what? If you have a problem and you think it's down to humidity, tell me about it. I want to learn because I don't possibly think that they could have a problem with humidity. I don't know, but let me know, okay? I want to hear from you if you think you have an issue. Let's quickly talk about feeding. They are not heavy feeders. You do not need to feed them on a regular basis. A handful of times a year is probably all you need to do. And when we talk about that, it's just a normal, everyday houseplant feed that you can buy practically from anywhere will be absolutely suitable. Each stem is a one-time sort of thing. The plant stores a huge amount of energy, it builds energy and it gets ready, and then it will produce a shoot and it will come shooting out of the soil, and you'll be like, whoa, and it just comes out, it's all coiled up. And this stem has all the leaves it's ever going to grow on that particular stem. And it's all tight, and then it comes out and it opens, and the leaves will be a greeny color, a light green. And that is also true for the raven. So they don't come out with the dark leaves. Even the original will come up with very light green, and so with the Zenzi, they all come up with like a tube of the stem, and it's very fast. We're talking maybe a month. It can go from nothing to actually the fully opened stem. It's very fast, and that's it. The stem will open gradually. It will change color. It looks more like the existing established clump, and that's it. Done. And that might be all that part of the plant grows during that entire growing season, that entire year. And that's normal. That's what you have to expect. If you have questions that you would like to ask me, any problems I haven't covered, just drop them in the comments and I'll do my best to share things I've learned. There's probably things I can't remember right now. That's how it always is with these things. But yeah, I've had this plant for a very long time too. It was a birthday present. I'm not saying which birthday it was, but it was many years ago. And yeah, and it's been with me since. So I really like this plant. This is obviously one of my favorites because it has a special meaning to it. But I really do like the Zenzi, so that's one to look out for. And the Raven just has a really unique look. There are not many houseplants which have dark leaves, so that is quite special as well. But yeah, it's a great plant, and it's great for beginners. It's great for experience. It's unusual. It's different. Even the name, ZZ plant. There aren't many houseplants beginning with the letter Z, so I think it's quite cool. Anyway, that's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.